Hello, everybody. I just had to turn my webcam on. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful, wonderful episode 102 of Matterhorn Mondays. If I link the playlist, you guys won't be able to listen to any of the songs because the songs are stored locally on my PC. Really sucks that Disney should really put this playlist or all this music on iTunes or on Discord, or not Discord. You guys know what I mean. Anyways, I was trying to wear my new Matterhorn Matt merch shirt that I'm going to show off later, but it was green screening out, so I can't wear it for the stream. Oh, the music's still on. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I can't wear my brand new Matt Snaps t-shirt, which kind of sucks, but that's okay. Also, Discord keeps closing randomly. I don't know what that's all about. So I'll have to... yeah. It's one of those Saturdays, but nonetheless, we have a wonderful stream planned for every single one of you here. I'm just gonna double check and make sure I don't have any. I don't know why. Oh, I probably should close Plex. That might be what is pooping on everything. And I think Discord, more like trash cord. Got him. All right, anyways, let's go ahead and get this stream started once I undo this. All right, here we go.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 102 of Matterhorn Mondays. I am your host, Matterhorn Matt.
And I'm Alex the Historian.
And today on the Outpost, we are joined by none other than Jason from the Roadies podcast. And before I introduce Jason, I'd like to give a big shout out to the Roadies podcast for finally telling me how to pronounce Joe Roadie's last name. So kudos to you guys on that podcast. But why don't you go ahead and say hello to everybody, Jason?
What's up, guys? My name's Jason. I do the intro for the show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if his voice sounds familiar, he does that intro part where it says Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays. That's him that does that a while back.
I don't think you asked me to do it either. I think I just did it for you, if I remember correctly.
I think I posted on Twitter that I needed it done or something, and then you were one of the only people to do it. So shout out to Jason. Fun fact, I'll also be on a guest on their podcast, the Roadies podcast, coming out hopefully pretty soon. Link to that will be in the description down below. And I can't remember if I already asked you to explain to the audience what it is you do on the podcast, what it is you do on Twitter. So why don't you go ahead and give a brief explanation of that?
Well, on Twitter, where you can follow us at Roadies. Basically, it's Roadies like we're fans of Joe Rohde, and we just talk about everything to do with Joe Rohde, and then we make fun of him a little bit, just a little bit, and we talk about Disney a little bit.
All right, yeah, like I said, link will be in the description down below. Yeah, guys, it's pronounced Rohde. I legit had no idea, but now
I didn't.
How did you not know
either,
that?
honestly?
I mean, I knew it was either Rohde or Road. So it was one that I 50-50, but I was wrong. So yeah, shout out to the podcast for helping me pronounce his last name. As you guys know, links to everything, the Twitter, the Discord, Instagram, all that stuff will be down in the description below. And if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the podcast, you can submit your name and date using the Google Doc down below. We don't have any birthdays this week, sadly. Or actually, I could be... Today's the 17th. I don't know if I said these last week, but we did have 2 birthdays on Wednesday. We had actually Jason's birthday on Wednesday.
Hey!
Am I correct? Okay, so happy...
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy belated
Thank you.
birthday to Jason, as well as Troy. We don't have a last name for Troy, but his birthday was on the 14th, as well as Jason. So happy birthday to both of you guys. If you guys are... if Troy's listening, happy birthday to Troy. We got a really great stream planned for you guys, and a new feature introduced last week. If you guys would like to voice your opinion on any of the topics we have at hand, leave a voicemail. Go ahead and give 575-386-5814 a call. Leave a voicemail about any of the topics that we're talking about. If you have any opinions to say, we'll go ahead and listen to them live on the show, and we'll react to them. And I have been announcing this. Next week, it's finally happening, you guys. D23. I'll be live streaming during the D23 Parks and Resorts panel at 10 a.m. Disneyland time. On Sunday, the 25th of August. I'll be live reacting to that, I guess. And we're also... The live stream for next week's podcast is going to have to be pushed to Monday, or to Sunday. So I'm thinking maybe for that podcast, Alex and I can... do our normal intro stuff, and then once the stream starts, then we'll just full react to that, and that will be the podcast. Let me know what you guys think of that wonderful, interesting idea. D23, very excited. And before we get into this week's news from the Peak, I'd like to showcase to you guys, I was going to wear my brand new merch t-shirt on stream for the Matt Snaps merch shirt. But it was green screening out for some reason, so I guess I'll just have to show it here to you guys. As you can see, artist will be linked in the description below. It's kind of hard to see it without blocking the microphone. Yeah, I also ordered pins, so pins to that will be coming very shortly, hopefully within the next week and a half probably, so be excited for those. And I don't want to take up too much more time, but we got the good old mango Snapple going this week. And it's not a green shirt, it's a yellow shirt. I don't know why it's keying the green background back here, but the shirt is yellow, so that doesn't really make any sense to me. Anyways, very interesting stuff. Moving on, we have a lot of great pieces of news from the Peak, so let's go ahead and get right into this week's News from the Peak.
We now present to you News from the Peak.
We only have 2 bits of news from the Peak coming in this week. Our first bit, though, is very exciting. I'm also not sure to pronounce his first name. It's Ewan McGregor, not Ewan. I mean, obviously it's not Ewan. Ewan? Ewan? Whichever you guys prefer, comment down below. I'm going to say...
I mispronounced Rhodey, so I'm not going to give this one a try.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go forth and say Ewan McGregor is set to return as Obi-Wan in a Disney Plus series on their streaming. Now, I should probably note that this is not 100% confirmed by Disney or by Star Wars, Lucasfilm themselves, but Variety is pretty certain it's going to happen. So, it was been rumored for a while that Ewan McGregor would return for a full-length Obi-Wan film, but after Solo flopped, as many of you guys know, Disney pushed stomped on the brakes, I guess is the right word to say. Stomped on the brakes when it comes to the live-action Star Wars, I guess, anthology films is what they were calling them. So very interesting stuff. I love Ewan. I'm just going to say it all three ways. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. And let's go ahead and start off with Mr. Jason. What are your thoughts on Mr. Ewan McGregor coming back as Obi-Wan?
He's definitely my favorite Obi-Wan of the Obi-Wans. I love his beard. I love the high ground. And overall, I think he's the best Obi-Wan.
All right, wise words. I do also think he is the best Obi-Wan, even though we've only had 3, maybe? 2? No, it's been, I don't know. Alex.
I think it's 2.
Mr.
Alex, what are your thoughts?
I'm actually kind of happy to hear this. I hope it's true because I really like the character of Obi-Wan, and as far as I'm aware when it comes to Star Wars movies, there's only been 2 Obi-Wan Kenobis. But nevertheless, I'm really excited to see this. I hope it's really true. I really liked him as Obi-Wan Kenobi. His poor dialogue, though, was due to George Lucas, not because of Ewan McGregor or Ewan McGregor, whatever, because of McGregor.
Yeah, I really do like him as an
now
actor.
present to you news
from
the
you
Peak.
guys. Yeah, he's a really good actor. I'm a big fan of him in general, not just in the Star Wars films. He did really great in the Winnie the Pooh. What was that movie called? It was called Christopher Robin.
Christopher Robin.
Yeah, I don't know how I could forget that. He was good in that movie. Plus, he does a really good job at portraying Alec Guinness's, Obi-Wan as a younger man. So very excited to see more of him. If this is confirmed, like I said, Disney or Lucasfilm have said nothing to confirm this, but yeah, Variety is pretty certain that it's going to happen. But anyways, moving on to our final bit of news from the Peak. This is really interesting. I thought you guys would get a kick out of this. Incredibles-themed mid-century test rooms have appeared at the contemporary resort at Walt Disney World. The rooms are side by side on the 8th floor, and I'll be providing these wonderful images that Blog Mickey took. Big shout out to them. Apparently, this was done as a test to show off to Disney executives, and if they sign off on more rooms, more around the resort may or may not undergo a similar refurb. As you can see, I'll go ahead and scroll through these images here. Brand new sort of carpets, brand new art, incredible. You see Elastigirl there, as well as these tiles, I guess. That's
kind of really cool because it is considered, it's the contemporary resort, and it's like kind of funny because with that resort there's only so many updates you can do to it to make it modern before its own architecture works against it. So the idea of making it mid-century modern totally, I think, works. So hopefully that it's a good idea. Hopefully it works out.
Again, you guys can see all the images. It's just a handful of them from Blog Mickey. Shout out to them. They do really great stuff. Jason, what are your thoughts on The Incredibles seemingly taking over the contemporary resort?
Just based on the pictures, I mean, they look really, really fun and lively, which I think that hotel is kind of boring a little bit. And if they were to do it at a hotel, it definitely is the correct hotel to do it at. So I think that's kudos to Disney for figuring that one out.
Yeah, all right, well said. I'm a big fan of this. It looks nice, and it's only limited to these 2 rooms currently. I'd be a big fan of this. I'd like to see it around all the other resorts.
$1 million a night.
Yeah. I'd like to see, rooms like these all around the resort in small amounts, across the Walt Disney World Resort. Maybe limit it to 1 floor. There's a really great side-by-side comparison of the original and this new one on blogmickey.com. Links to all the articles we're referring to will be in the description, as always. But, if they go around, retheme every single room in the contemporary resort to The Incredibles, then, we'll have a problem, Disney. You can take, I'm coming knocking on your front door. But anyways, that does it for this week's news from the Peak. And before we get into our main topics, we do have a very special bit of Alex in the parks, and I teased this a couple weeks ago. Let's see. Special thanks to Albert over on Instagram for this sick Alex in the Parks jingle. Let's go ahead and hear that. Yeah, and I need to edit in the fade right there at the end because it just sort of abruptly stops. But anyways, we do have this piece of footage actually taken from Alex's vlog that was posted the other day. We'll go ahead and play this through. Actually, Alex, do you want me to play it with the audio, or do you want to narrate over it while we play it silently? I should have prepared more for this.
You should just play it with audio because there's other stuff in it that I won't be able to keep up with because I'm on a delay, so I won't be able to see it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good point. Yeah, we'll go ahead and play this through for you guys. And let me just make sure the audio. I'm very prepared for this show, you guys. Here we go.
Wall down to regular street level like they were doing over by Fantasyland. But what's interesting is how the rest of it seems to be blocked off. Let me go this way, because it is really odd that they would block off like all this way over here. The first thing that comes to mind is, are they getting rid of the French fry rocks? Oh no, it doesn't look like it. Otherwise they would have this surrounded. They are probably taking the opportunity to redo the concrete. The concrete has been suffering lately. Oh, it's the Queen. Anyway, so that was interesting. So no, it doesn't look like they're getting rid of the French fry rocks. They're probably just redoing the concrete and bringing the curbs down to ground level on Main Street. So we are here by the Matterhorn, and you can kind of see that the waterfall here in the center is turned off. This is where the large chunk of concrete fell off. I used to think it was just the plaster from the interior, but actually it was from the exterior, which means it's concrete. So they got a construction scrim up and some scaffolding to work on it. They are sending bobsleds through the ride. Whether there's anybody on it, it doesn't seem like it. The waterfalls on all the other sides of the mountain are still on, though. And like I said, they are sending bobsleds through. So it seems the ride can function during this construction period. And actually, what's really interesting is if this is where the concrete fell off, this actually used to be a spot where there were many holes right there, so that way guests inside the mountain could see out. But all that was sealed up in 1978 for the redo of the Matterhorn. So that's really interesting. The concrete probably fell off of one of the patched holes from 1978. Oh, and there goes Cinderella. Lots of characters out this morning. Over here on the other side of the Adventureland entrance, it seems once again they're working on the little waterway here. I don't know if you remember, but like a month or two ago, they unveiled this after widening this walkway here, and they had a nice little area where you could look out over the water, which didn't exist before. But now they're working on it again, so I wonder what exactly they're going to do with it.
To address. And first of all, Matt, there's a echo.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
So, thanks. So first of all, it has to do with the rock work. So, I know it seems like in the video I just walked up to it and just assumed that because I didn't see walls around the rocks themselves that they weren't removing the rock. That's not exactly what it was. I know how the park operates and how things work and what the construction looks like because I've just been there for so many years and I know all the ins and outs of the park.
Okay. Discord keeps crashing. Okay, here we go.
Is because those rocks pictured in the video that were butted up against the blue construction walls, those ones hide a air pump house that operates the Astro Orbiter. The air pump house is constantly being accessed by the cast members that work there, because also the computers that run the ride are also located in that room. So if they were to surround those rocks with walls or just demolish them, they would have to close the Astro Orbiter, because they won't be able to access the room if it's under construction. It's considered a construction site. It's not safe for regular cast members to go in there. Therefore, they can't operate the ride. So the ride would have to be closed, and it's not even on the schedule yet for the ride to be closed down. So that right there, by deduction of reasoning, was kind of the reason why I figured out it's just the walkway that they're repaving. Now, Matt, if you switch over to the photograph that I sent you on Discord.
Yes, I just saved that right now.
Another YouTuber, who she goes by, she's in Los Angeles. I follow her channel a lot. She does construction footage and stuff like that. She rode the Astro Orbiter. And from there, she took images of the construction. And what you see in the image is basically just them ripping up the concrete, just like I said, all the way down to Main Street to drop those curbs. So that way people don't trip on Main Street, because that's becoming a huge thing now, is people, for some reason, automatically this year started tripping on sidewalks. So yes, they're doing that. And as you can see, they're being really delicate by going around the curbside trim of the planter and the French fry rocks. They wouldn't be so delicate with it if they were just going to bulldoze it. You know, that you'd probably be seeing some damage from the machines hacking away at it, stuff like that. What they have done, though, and this even I can confirm, they have removed the Tomorrowland marquee, which is in the center of that walkway. It is built into a tiny set of French fry rocks, and it just says Tomorrowland, and then there's the little Tomorrowland plaque on it. They have removed that, and I've heard from several different sources that they are going to replace that little marquee with a brand new Tomorrowland marquee sign. And so those it's built into a tiny version of the French fry rocks. So technically, yes, they did remove part of the French fry rocks, but not the main eyesore that we're looking at, that we're all expecting them to remove. Now, we'll get into this later, but I'm just going to briefly just finish off by saying that I'm not saying they're not going to eventually remove these rocks. I'm just saying that at this very moment, there's no plans to remove them at all at this very moment, but things could change within the next couple of weeks when D23 makes announcements.
Yeah, like Alex said, we're going to touch, not briefly, I shouldn't say briefly, we're going to touch on this a very big amount for our third and final topic for the day. And before we move on to our main topics, let's go ahead and give a rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. For our first topic, is Disney starting to buckle when it comes to park pricing? Second topic, we will be talking about the state of the Disneyland Railroad, thanks to Mr. Alex, the historian, for bringing this topic to my attention. And finally, we'll be getting into some very juicy Tomorrowland rumors we've been hearing these past couple weeks. Very juicy, you guys. Rare, not well done. This is rare rumors, you guys. I don't know what I'm trying to do. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to our first main topic. This is very interesting. I should preface this by saying Fresh Baked Presents put out a very wonderful video detailing this. If you'd like to have some more background information on that, head over to good old Dave's video down in the description. Disney just introduced a new ticket called the quote-unquote Midday Magic for Walt Disney World Resort. And guests can enjoy admission to one theme park that grants them access to the park only after noon. That's something very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like this before. A park, or I guess I should say an admission ticket that only grants access to the theme parks after noon is something I've never seen before. 2-day ticket is $88 per day. 3-day ticket is $84 per day. And a 4-day ticket is $79 per day. Now, this may or may not be in response to the low attendance, not just at the Magic Kingdom, but mostly at Disneyland that we've been seeing these past couple weeks since Galaxy's Edge's opening. Let's go ahead and start with Mr. Alex. What are your thoughts on this brand new Midday Magic ticket coming to Walt Disney World Resort?
I think that it's a good idea because not very many people spend that much time in the park, myself included, but I mean, I have an annual pass, but I mean, nevertheless, like some people don't spend all day there the way that people who are vacationing do. And so for locals, this could be a really good thing for them. Like if they're, let's just say they're having friends from out of town visit them and they want their friends to come into the park with them, but they know their friends aren't going to spend all day there. So it's kind of a good thing. And the other thing about it too is it helps even out crowd levels. So instead of making everyone pay for a full day ticket and everyone comes at the same time in the morning, crowding up the whole park, instead people have the option to show up at certain times of the day and allowing for those peak times to be less crowded while the pretty much dead times get a little bit more of a boost. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, very interesting. What about you, Mr. Disney Dude?
I think behind this is to add more value in the early morning magic hours and things of that nature, so that not everyone will be there at opening. And then that adds value to staying at a Disney property, doing those morning hours, and any of those early entry experiences. Helps keep that park nice and empty in the morning. But it really is an interesting concept to see it done this way rather than an evening hours ticket, which is like after 5 or after 6, which some theme parks have done. So I'm interested in seeing how this works out for Disney and if they intend on further making prices cheaper as you go up. So there's like a 10 p.m. ticket for like $30.
Yeah, again, that's sort of the direction you picture in your mind when you hear this, because like I said, I've never seen Disney do anything like this before. Again, I'm not that old, so they could have done it in the past, but this is a very interesting a step forward. Like I said, this could be the clickbait title is Disney buckling under the park's attendance being so low at Disneyland, and people complaining about the prices being too high for the tickets, which is interesting because last week we touched on that shareholder meeting, the Q3 shareholder meeting, and Bob Iger himself said that he didn't think ticket prices were an issue. But then you come around and see this brand new ticket option that's, cheaper than the original normal ticket that you could buy for the park. So it is very interesting. We're going to stay on this development. This is just a very small topic. We're going to go ahead and move on to our second main topic of the day. Now, we would like to talk to you about the state of the Disneyland Railroad and its future. Now, some of you may have seen in recent news of how the Disneyland Railroad was evacuated last week after the Ward Kimball, I believe, the Ward Kimball locomotive railroad train, I don't know the right word, broke down. And since Alex is our resident train expert, why don't we go ahead and have him fill us in on his expertise on what he thinks the future of the Disneyland Railroad is, from its maintenance, which I believe we've touched on in the past, and we've gone to it in depth, Alex and a few other people on the Discord server, about how Disneyland is maintaining their trains. So let's go ahead and have Mr. Alex explain to us this topic.
Let me just first note that I know it seems like every time we go into a topic, it's like, oh, Alex is the expert in this one. So it makes me seem like I'm not at all like credible for any of this stuff. But I swear, people can have more than one interest at a time. So, anywho, the Disneyland Railroad. it's always been well taken care of in the past. It was one of Walt Disney's favorite attractions. As a matter of fact, there probably wouldn't be a Disneyland if it wasn't for the railroad being constructed. So, ever since Disneyland's first decade, they would send off one of the locomotives for a full repair every year. So that meant like every few years, one of the locomotives received a complete overhaul. Well, in the past, like decade, they haven't really sent any locomotives out for refurbishment except the CK Holiday, which they spent $2 million on refurbishing. And there's a reason for that. The specialized steam locomotive shops that can actually do those full rebuilds, um, there's becoming a lot less of them for obvious reasons. And so the closest one that they can rely on is out in like southern central California. So it's not easy to get there, and it just costs a lot of money. So $2 million was spent on the CK Holiday. That was back in 2016, and they just did a whole overhaul. And since then, Disney is kind of like, yeah, we don't want to keep spending $2 million at a time on all these locomotives. So they've opted to just run them all on just basic maintenance without literally taking them apart and rebuilding them. Things like the metal has to be carefully examined for hairline fractures. We're talking about a steam boiler that generates pressures up to 150 pounds per square inch. And so that's a lot of pressure. If there was a huge crack in the boiler, we would probably see a huge explosion of steam and superheated water. So it's for that reason that it's imperative to keep these locomotives in good condition. It's only amazing that with how poor of a condition the Ward Kimball was already in, that it was only the axle that had a crack in it. So, and there's been word recently, like amongst like the Disney Railroad fans, we all kind of stay in the loop, about things like fire exhaust tubes inside the boiler breaking apart and cracking, causing steam leakage that explodes into the firebox, that kind of thing. And then it just gets really dangerous with these kinds of machines. So, and really expensive. So the company since 2008 hasn't really sent any locomotives for refurbishment. Even Walt Disney's arguably favorite locomotive, the EP Ripley, has been missing since the railroad reopened after Galaxy's Edge made its reroute. And so everyone assumed that it went for refurbishment, but recent word is they just abandoned it in the back of the roundhouse. So and the thing is it's like, this isn't necessarily new information. Even in the 1990s, when money was really running short, the railroad was kind of suffering from that, and it only started picking up after the year 2000. They just started taking better care of it. But again, we're in that cycle where they're not taking good care of it. And this brings us to the point of this conversation, which is that with how expensive it is to run these things, and with the evidence of how poorly they're being taken care of, I mean, granted, paint jobs and stuff only cover up the underlying issues. Mm-hmm. So they're still sparkly and shiny for the most part, but they're not running well. And to the point where in the middle of the day, there's always at least one locomotive that has to be taken off the line because it's malfunctioning in some way. The Ward Kimball, with its axle cracking in this way, is just one of the bigger issues that they've had. And it's just drawn more attention to the railroad. So the biggest fear right now is that, will Disney see these, super high pressure locomotives that break down constantly as a liability that they need to get rid of? Mm-hmm. Or will they see it as, gee, we need to step up our maintenance game here and start taking care of these things? That's where things get kind of, mixed up, and there's a lot of opinions thrown around. Many people believe, well, it's Walt's railroad, they're going to want to take care of it. Some people like me who are kind of pessimists, we kind of think like, well, we've seen the way the company reacts to these things, and they're going to see it as a liability issue, and a huge expense. At the moment, all 5 locomotives need some kind of major overhaul, even the CK Holiday, which just came back. But the most dire ones, which really need an overhaul right now, would be the Ward Kimball, the Fred Gurley, which looks almost like it, but is mostly green colored. And then there's the EP Ripley, Walt's favorite locomotive. Those 3 are in dire need of a complete overhaul, with Ernest S. Marsh and CK Holiday being the last 2 in the line. So anyway, I will touch back on this subject later on in the podcast due to a different subject we will be talking about. So back to you, Matt.
Yeah, I guess I should just start by saying I know nothing about trains, so all of what is going to come out of my mouth is based on seeing the Disneyland Railroad as, like what it is, an attraction. Walt obviously loved trains. He put a train in Disneyland. So yeah, that's just going to be my background on this. I don't know any of the technical aspects on how I don't know what an axle is.
It's the same thing as an axle on your truck.
I don't know what that means, Alex.
Are you kidding me?
I don't know what that means, Alex.
An axle.
You've underestimated my knowledge when it comes to automotive stuff. I'm assuming it's the things where the tires are connected, and then I don't know. I'm just not going to talk about it, because I'm going to embarrass myself.
It's the large, heavy-duty metal rod that connects one wheel to the other and supports the weight of the body of the vehicle. So the Disneyland Railroad's axles are really large and powerful, but they support a lot of weight. So the Ward Kimball engine itself weighs about 12,000 pounds at least. I'm approximating here. It's around that amount, but about 12,000 pounds. And that's a lot of weight. Your truck probably weighs about 2,000 pounds. So
that's more than I weigh. Holy cow.
Yeah. I mean, I should hope it would be. But these trains, they're not like cars, and I'm not just speaking to you, Matt, I'm speaking to everybody, but they're not like cars where you can just be like, all right, well, let's stick one of those lifts and underneath it and check underneath the hood. It's not like that. The jack, yeah, there you go. See, I don't know. You can't just stick a jack under it, lift it up, and see what's wrong. These things are so large and so heavy. It takes specialized cranes and equipment to lift them up. And even then, they're kind of fragile because unlike a car, you can probably lift up the front end of a car like you would if you're towing it, and the back wheels will hold it. If you try to lift up the front of a locomotive, it's so heavy that the middle of it will start to bend and you could break it. So it's it needs to be evenly supported. So it's just the technicalities of refurbishing these things requires it to be sent away to a special shop that has all this equipment to do that. The Disneyland Railroad Roundhouse has a lot of equipment and capabilities to repair these engines, but there's just certain things that they have a limit that they can't do. So yeah, I don't know. It makes me sad to even have to get to this conversation because we shouldn't have to, but it's just kind of this is where we are. And, there's talks of a recession coming. And so it's kind of will this affect the railroad? Will this be the final nail in the coffin? I don't know, because they just spent millions of dollars rerouting the train. So, are they going to want to say goodbye to those millions of dollars? It's maybe. I mean, they've done stuff like that before. So,
yeah. Again, I'm not a technical kind of guy, so, but I could see, I see where you're coming from. I could see how Disney could view this as a liability. I'm trying to think in the past of other examples of where Disney shut something down because it was malfunctioning like that. Maybe like
rocket rods.
Yeah, I was just about to say maybe the rocket rods. And I mean, they went down for refurbishment, and they're still being refurbished now. So hopefully they'll come back soon. Hopefully they've worked out all the kinks. Everybody's face is just
it's like I said, like you'd think that they just poured a ton of money into the refurbishment and rerouting of the railroad. You'd think that they wouldn't just want to give up on it. But once again, you look at things like rocket rods, where it was only like 2 years old and they got rid of it because it was just a headache and expensive and just not easy to deal with. And, it's a company. I mean, in the end, Walt Disney died a long time ago. His influence and his say-so is a lot weaker now than it was then. So the company just looks at these things as, I mean, literally, a ride like this, the Disneyland Railroad, is considered an asset. An asset generates a certain amount of revenue. If the asset costs more than the revenue it generates, they might consider like closing it. The irony is that the Disneyland Railroad is the most popular ride in Disneyland by the numbers. It hauls the most guests per hour, and it garners technically the longest waits if you consider how long the line is for each station on a busy day, and then add all them together. So it's weird. It is the highest capacity ride in Disneyland, and yet it is in danger of closing. I mean, not right now. There's no official word. I don't want to freak anybody out, but I mean, just how expensive it is and hard to maintain, and the fact that there's like 1 or 2 places in California that can actually work on it to refurbish it. It's like it's just becoming too difficult to do. Knott's Berry Farm could do it. They have a shop that can fully restore the engines. I don't think Disney would want to send their engines to Knott's Berry Farm, though. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Would train cost less than refurbishing the old ones?
I'm sorry, what?
Train cost less or more than just refurbishing them?
If you were to build a new one from scratch, it would almost cost more. Or I mean, it would cost more, but only by a little bit than actually refurbishing the old ones.
Yeah, better option? Isn't this making a decision?
I really don't know. I mean, Disney does have the money to either buy brand new ones that are custom built or to just refurbish these. They're more likely to refurbish these because it would, once again, it would probably cost them less. If the CK Holiday was refurbished for $2 million, they could probably build one from scratch for like 2.5 or 3 million. But once again, it's like, oh, do we save $1 million and get a brand new engine? But here's the other weird thing. These engines, they last a long time. And it's like, but the problem is that if you were to buy a new one outright, it doesn't necessarily mean that, let me rephrase what I'm trying to say here. The engines aren't like cars where like everything is part of one body, and if something major goes wrong with it, it's totaled. You have to get rid of it. It's a little bit different. It's kind of like everything on the locomotive is replaceable, except for the what we call the chassis, which is just the backbone that holds everything together. And so it's like you need a new boiler, you can just unbolt it and lift it out. You need, new controls, unbolt it, lift it out. For a car, it's like, oh, if the engine breaks, you need a new engine. But a new engine costs just as much as a new car. So locomotives aren't like that. It's kind of like everything has like a fixed price almost all the time. And it's usually just cheaper to repair a locomotive than to just buy a new one. So it's kind of finicky. I feel like I'd be going on for hours about that.
Well, guys, Matterhorn Mondays After
Steam?
Dark.
The what? What?
Oh, I was
Are you
talking.
running out of Steam?
Oh, am I running out of steam? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not too knowledgeable. I do think someone said in chat that there's a big difference, of course, between the railroad and between the rocket rods closing down. I mean, of course, I mean, like Alex said, you'd think Disney would not want to close the railroad, because I think we can all collectively agree, and I believe we've said this on the show before, there'd be no Disneyland without Walt's love of trains. So I feel like, the train is like almost like the backbone of the park almost. I really don't think Disney would want to do away with the trains. I mean, but yeah, Alex does bring up a few good points. I mean, they do cost a lot to maintain. I mean, I guess you could always run 2 of the trains while you get the others refurbished. But yeah, I don't know if Disney would want to spend that much money. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this was sort of a wake-up call to Disney almost, maybe. I mean, thankfully no one got hurt. If someone did end up getting hurt because of this faulty maintained trains, you can only imagine what kind of backlash Disney would get from not properly maintaining their trains, and somebody getting injured or breaking down like that. So yeah, I feel like Disney got off a little easy when it comes to this, but hopefully, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint, because
even the fuel they run on is expensive. Like, they use biodiesel, which is made from the fryer oils around the park, and they take that, they send it off to a company which converts the fryer oil into biodiesel, and it burns very clean, so it's good for the environment in comparison to what it would normally burn, which is a type of fossil fuel or wood. But the problem is that the fuel is so expensive to convert. I think it's something like $50 a gallon, and it goes through like 150 gallons a day or something like that. It's crazy. Like, just one locomotive goes through about 150 gallons of fuel a day, I believe. So it's just like, and just imagine that's just super expensive. So, gosh.
Mark says a solar-powered train. Alex, would a solar-powered train be an efficient option to replace the expensive fuel?
Hong Kong Disneyland has electric trains. Those are all run off of like Tesla batteries, basically. Not that brand, but technically. And, some people like them, but people like me who are like crazy live steam expert, crazy people, we love steam. So it's just kind of like, like, you can't call it an authentic steam train if it runs on electricity.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, very interesting. Jason, do you have any final thoughts on this topic before we move on?
I don't really know that much about the trains to really care about them, but I just don't think they're going to go anywhere. I think Disney will do everything they possibly can to keep that going around, because that's what you see when you first get to the gates. I mean, you can't get rid of that.
Yeah.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. I agree with Jason. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. But there's like that little thing in the back of my mind where it's like, but what if they get rid of the trains? Because
it's like the voice of like evil Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder. It's like, but what if?
Yeah, exactly. Because I was going to say, we've seen what this company is willing to do just to cut costs. Pixar Pier, the rocket rods even. Anyways, before we get into our third and final topic, let's go ahead and take a quick break to acknowledge the sponsors of the show. If you guys are wondering where you can find even more family-friendly live streams just like this one, head on over to theliveplace.com. The Live Place is your headquarters for great family-friendly live streams. They cover anything from Disney to other vacation spots, various variety shows, and have some amazing streamers like Resort TV One and myself. Also, be sure to check out puckermint.com, where you can find amazing pins and stickers. Puckermint is based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few hours from where I live. And since I'm a big believer in supporting local artists, we decided to partner up. Be sure to use the coupon code down below when you make your next order. Again, that's puckermint.com and puckermint on Instagram. Alrighty. And for our third and final topic, I'm very excited to talk about this. I love talking about Tomorrowland. Whether it's getting demolished, whether it's not getting demolished, I just love Tomorrowland. But anyways, this sort of relates to the bit of Alex in the Parks that we had earlier in the show. Well, we'd like to talk about some recent news regarding Tomorrowland. Now, Alex sort of already explained this in the Alex in the Parks, but I'll go ahead and give a recap. I'm sure you guys have seen all the posts about the rocks, quote-unquote, the rocks being removed from the entrance to the land in Disneyland. Yeah, that's just one bit of this huge pool of information we want to share with you. We'll also be getting into the future of the land based on rumors we've recently heard from our insiders. Now, I personally don't have any insiders, I guess. Alex is the one who gives me all this information from all of his friends. You know, not to name any names, but Mr. Alex, why don't you go...
Nerds.
Yeah, all the nerds. So, Mr. Alex, why don't you go ahead and give a recap of what you've been hearing in regards to the future Tomorrowland rumor / removal / rumor.
Do I talk about how this relates to D23?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have basically two major insiders that kind of tell me what's going on with the company. And then I have a bunch of other insiders who have their own insiders that relay those and that information to me. So I have a bunch of people, and we all just talk in this big circle, and we kind of recap on things and then just see like what fits and what doesn't. And so basically, almost all of these friends of mine have been telling me one by one, you know, the big announcement coming from D23 is gonna be new Tomorrowland for Disneyland.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, and again, this isn't official news, and everything I'm gonna say here on out is not official. It is 100% right now a rumor, but coming from people we believe and that people we trust to be trustworthy. I don't know how to word that. So anyway, without further ado, some of the things I've been hearing to update on, and hopefully you guys remember the previous podcast where I've talked about the most recent Tomorrowland rumors, is that basically most of Tomorrowland will be completely demolished and rebuilt from the ground up for the most part, with one or two buildings remaining, but having their footprint kind of altered and stuff like that. So some things I've recently heard from a bunch of people is, yes, these French fry rocks will eventually be removed upon the announcement of new Tomorrowland. And part of that is because the Astro Orbiter will be removed from the front of the land, and another spinner type ride will take its place in a different area of Tomorrowland. And again, the reason those French fry rocks aren't being removed at this minute, or at least not the ones on the left side, is because it houses the mechanical workings of the Astro Orbiter. So, anywho, so further on, buildings like the Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters building will be completely demolished from what I hear, and a new building will be erected in its place, one that will allow for more walkway space in the middle of Tomorrowland. Some other kind of attraction will go in there. We don't know exactly what yet, but we think it's going to be some kind of high capacity ride, which will kind of take you through parts of Tomorrowland, kind of like rocket rods, something that is high speed, yet has a pretty large capacity. As well as the Star Tours building will remain, and the simulators will remain, but it'll be rethemed to something else, some other Disney property. Um, the Innoventions building, which currently has the Star Wars launch bay, we've heard is going to be completely demolished. They've been neglecting its care, so parts of it are actually collapsing, including like parts of the roofs and ceilings. And so we heard that's going to be completely demolished, and a new ride or attraction will take its place, or part of a ride or attraction will go over it. The Tron coaster we've all been hearing that's coming to California, we hear is not coming to Tomorrowland. Instead, it's going to be themed to Marvel, and it's going over in DCA at the new Marvel Land for phase 2. So yes, we're getting the same coaster, but themed to Marvel and in DCA. Space Mountain is going to be the star thrill attraction of Tomorrowland, as it is right now, I guess. But it's going to be completely redone.
Wait. You don't consider Finding Nemo submarine voyage to be a thrill attraction?
I find the smells that accumulate in those subs to be thrilling and scary.
All right.
So Space Mountain will be redone. They're going to keep the dome, but everything else around it and inside of it will be demolished to make way for a larger roller coaster type attraction, kind of with long roller coaster trains like the Space Mountain in Disneyland Paris will have. As for what the inside of the show will look like, I don't know. But it will also have a very large indoor queue space, so that way people don't have to stand out in the sunlight, and it'll be ADA compliant as well. That's kind of the current trend, is to make all the rides queues ADA compliant in the park. We'll see more of that along the coming years. But things like the Star Trader probably come back with a new name, but nevertheless, a retail space in that same spot. Now, when it comes to things like the Submarine Voyage and Autopia, that's interesting. So one of my sources says that those two attractions currently are in really bad disrepair. So a few of the submarines are currently just left at the dock because they just don't want to repair them, because the ride is going to eventually close very soon.
Yeah.
Autopia, I heard the same thing. There's problems with the roadway. The tree roots are buckling the ground. The tracks are warping. Things like that, just because of ground settling. Normally, they would ask Honda to repair this stuff, but Honda apparently says that, well, they haven't been asked to send any money over. So that leads us to believe, well, if Disney's ignoring these issues, it could be because they're going to close the ride. And that's been the long-standing rumor. So this part only makes us believe it more. So with the Autopia and Submarine Voyage closed, this will give them a chance to expand that area into probably a Fantasyland expansion. Now, here's the other interesting thing that I heard from another source. So have you guys heard that the monorail has been scheduled so far to close every day between 11 and 6 p.m.?
Yeah.
11 a.m. to 6 p.m. So Disney says it's because of the weather. And me and Matt were saying it's probably because they're trying to save money. But even I thought, saving a few bucks on a few cast members shift pay every day, it's a lot of money, but not in comparison to how much money, things normally cost. So I kind of thought that was weird. But another source of mine says, actually, the reason why it's closed is because some folks in maintenance and Imagineering want a time window open every day, so they have the freedom to walk up, inspect the track, probably inspect it to see what pylons and what beams can be reused for a reroute, to save on the cost. Because as we know, like, it costs like $1 million to build like a 50-foot span of it. It's incredibly expensive. So they're going to want to see if they can save any of those for a possible reroute and stuff like that. As well as the fact that there's been a lot of rumor that the new monorail track will actually cut right through the center of Tomorrowland in some way, shape, or form, with the original monorail station remaining where it is, but just with a slightly shorter loop so people aren't winding around Tomorrowland like crazy right now. And so anyway, supposedly the reason why it's been closing all this time is to give maintenance and Imagineering a time window to just walk up during that time whenever they want, see things in broad daylight, because otherwise they'd have to use little flashlights in the middle of the night and stuff like that. It just doesn't work. So this just allows them to see things in broad daylight and get a better understanding, survey the ground, see what needs to be removed. All these three rides, the monorail, the submarines, Autopia, they're all intertwined together, including the people mover tracks as well. So trying to survey the area to figure out where the bulldozers will be parked, where things will begin demolition, all that has to be carefully planned out, or else a bulldozer could go right through the ceiling of the submarine voyage, or or there might be an accident where they ram like a people mover track, causing it to collapse. So they have to plan their little strategy, and that takes a lot of planning with this huge massive space that they have to plan out. So that's what I heard on that end. And lastly, to circle back around to the Disneyland Railroad conversation, so as you know, when Galaxy's Edge was being built, Disney used the project as a opportunity to allocate some funds towards refurbishing the rest of the park, right? They used some of those funds to do the Project Stardust and just revamp a lot of the park. Well, supposedly this huge Tomorrowland redo is going to give them, a comparable amount of extra funds for the rest of the park. One of those things, supposedly, is going to be allocated a certain amount, a couple $1 million, going to be allocated towards the Disneyland Railroad to refurbish any engines that are in dire need of refurbishment, such as the broken down Ward Kimball and the EP Ripley. And the reason why this goes into it is for two reasons. One, they might have to rebuild Tomorrowland Depot in order to redo Tomorrowland and fit everything in place. The other reason is because Disneyland's 65th anniversary is on its way, soon to be its 70th and 75th anniversaries. And with a new Tomorrowland, it will bring a lot more people to the parks, and the railroad is going to need to be able to accommodate that many people. At the moment, the railroad, with only 3 operating engines and some really, low capacity train cars, I say relatively low capacity, they're actually high capacity, but nevertheless, they're going to want to put money into the railroad so that way it can accommodate more passengers in the future. How are they going to do that? Well, some of you may know that some of the train cars face inwards towards the park, which allow you to see the dioramas nicely. But there's one train set that doesn't. It faces forward. So if you go through the dioramas, you have to look off to the side like this. And it just so happens that one, which I find annoyingly facing the wrong way, that one happens to hold the most people, like almost by double the amount. It's a really high capacity train, and it just so happens to be the same design that they sent to Walt Disney World's railroad in 71. And so all those trains there have a really high capacity thanks to that forward facing design. So the current rumor is part of the funds that will be allocated for the rest of the park in order for the park to accommodate more guests upon the grand opening of New Tomorrowland would be to upgrade the railroad, repair it, and replace at least one of its sideways facing train sets with a replica forward-facing set, which holds almost double the amount of people. So it's weird. This kind of stuff goes in a big loop. You know, you end up talking about one subject and you end up talking about all of them. So that is the current rumor update. I'm going to pass it to you, Matt, because I need to drink some water.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting stuff coming to us from Mr. Alex the historian. Thank you for presenting that information. Yeah, I do think it's interesting that Disney has not approached Honda to allocate more funds to repair the what are they even called? To repair Autopia. I forgot its name for a second there. Yeah, I remember a few weeks ago when people were all sad about there not being electric cars when that whole rumor was going around with the electric cars coming to to the Tomorrowland Speedway, and then people started talking about Disneyland, how they'd wish electric cars would come to there, and it's like, why would you be sad about electric cars not coming to Autopia? It's gonna close in a few years anyways. You guys understand that, right? It's very interesting stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I've said this in the past. I'm not a big fan of Autopia. I'm too tall. My legs don't fit right inside the seats. I can't push the pedals comfortably. But yeah, I feel like we've touched on at least most of this stuff in previous episodes when we've detailed these rumors that we're talking about. But it is very interesting to hear, though, that Alex's sources are telling him that the big announcement from D23 is going to be the Tomorrowland refurb. Now, I don't know.
I was going to say, that's the interesting thing is like, when every source says something different, then you kind of know things are up in the air, you know, but when every source, they're all saying the same thing, I've generally found that usually means it's happening. And in the past, it's been true. So when all my sources say the same thing, I'm kind of like, ooh, this might actually happen, you know?
Yeah, and I think we were discussing before the show started, because I wanted to clarify. I asked Alex to clarify whether or not the big announcement about Tomorrowland was going to be that special project that we talked about last week, or whether or not it was just going to be a special announcement coming to the parks panel. And Alex, what was the conclusion that you came to with that?
The conclusion I came to was I do thoroughly believe that the main announcement coming from D23 is going to be about new Tomorrowland, not just for California, but for Florida as well. I think they're going to work on 2 Tomorrowlands at the same time. And I know a lot of people are going to be saying in the chat, well, you know, it says Walt Disney Company announcement, not Disney Parks announcement. I know, people, but the Disney Parks are part of the Walt Disney Company, and doing 2 Tomorrowlands at once is kind of a big deal. So I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that's kind of what my evidence is pointing to. Yeah, see, someone just said it. So, you know, that's kind of what my evidence is pointing to. That's what all my sources are saying. They all agree on this except for one guy. Yeah, so I mean, I could be wrong, but even if it's not the main announcement, we all still believe that it's gonna be one of the announcements at D23 this year. So even if it's not the main announcement, it's still one of the announcements. So
okay,
yeah,
interesting. Mr. Jason, what are your thoughts on what are your thoughts overall on this Tomorrowland revamp, gutting the subs, removing Autopia, tearing down the Innoventions, all that stuff? What is your I'm not even sure if you're much of a Disneyland guy, but we want to hear your thoughts on this.
A little Disneyland, definitely not to the extent that you guys are, where, oh, God forbid they touch Small World. Oh no. Like, is a Disney company announcement. Will you be seeing and a parks announcement? Maybe everything Tomorrowland, maybe like a new series on Disney Plus, maybe. they're going to just retheme everything in Disneyland to Tomorrowland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, what's the name of... DSMI Newscast put out a video a couple days ago about his predictions on what that special announcement was going to be. So if you guys are interested in hearing his thoughts on that, go ahead and... I'll link that in the description, but before we move on with this, Lynette is actually in chat. She tried to call in and leave a voicemail earlier this morning, but apparently it was full. So she sent me a message on Instagram of what her thoughts on this. So I tried calling in, but your voicemail is full. My question to you is this. Since they are removing the rockwork from the entrance of Tomorrowland, do you think they should relocate the rockets? Now, I think we already touched on this in a few minutes ago, I think. Alex said that they were going to remove the rocket rods, or not the rocket rods, the Astro Orbiter, and they replace it with a different kind of spinner attraction in a different area of the park. And then we do have one other voicemail that I'd like to listen to here. This comes from Ryan, so let's go ahead and give this a listen. Okay.
Hey, Matt, this is Ryan, who is the co-host of the Roadies Roadie Show. Jason asked me to leave you a voicemail, which I thought was kind of pathetic on his behalf. So I just wanted to say hello, hope all is well, and that Jason is still number 2. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Ryan, for leaving that wonderful voicemail for us. Yeah, if you guys would like to call in.
Story.
Yeah, if you guys would like to call and leave your voicemails on the topics we're talking about, 575-386-5814. I know we had a couple problems with that during the week. People were messaging me on Twitter and on Discord saying the voicemail was full when it was empty. So I just went ahead and cleared all the voicemails out before we started the show. So if you do have any problems, again, this is still a work in progress. Like I said last week, still trying to get to know Google Voice. I don't know much about it, but we're learning as we go. Or I guess I should say I'm learning as I go. But anyways, yeah, very interesting stuff. A crane machine where you can grab a churro, says Reverend Puck. Hashtag, what's all with all the churro discussion in the chat? I have no idea what's going on. But anyways, yeah, we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all these wonderful Tomorrowland rumors we've been telling you guys. Again, I love talking Tomorrowland. I love Tomorrowland in general, but I also hate Tomorrowland. Do you guys, I don't know if that makes any sense. I love Tomorrowland.
You have a love-hate relationship with Tomorrowland.
Yes. Thank you, Alex, for helping me express myself better. I have a love-hate relationship with Tomorrowland and Disneyland. I grew up with the 98 version of it, and that's all I've known from Disneyland's Tomorrowland. I've been to the Magic Kingdom a couple times, but I don't really remember much from their Tomorrowland other than the People Mover, which is great. So yeah, it will be really refreshing once this Tomorrowland, our Disneyland Tomorrowland, finally gets a revamp, and I'll be the first to jump over the construction walls, get some great footage, and to report back to you guys. Hopefully I don't get kicked out of the park, but anyways, I think that just about does it for all of our topics for today's show. Unless you guys have any closing thoughts you'd like to say on anything, let's start with Mr. Jason. Do you have any closing thoughts on any of the topics we talked about today?
I feel like I just took a college course in trains. I feel like I have to use that information to improve other trains. I started doing that. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I feel the same. Thank you, Mr. Alex, for giving us that amazing background on the trains at Disneyland.
Just wait till my Disneyland Railroad history video comes out. It's going to be like a 3-part video, which goes into depth about the trains.
Okay.
So you just wait, buddy. You just wait.
Well, I was going to say, I've been meaning to I really want to get more into not just trains in general, but the Disneyland trains. I want to know what the heck Alex is talking about when he talks about the axle of the train, the steam box of the train. I don't know. You guys know what I mean. But before we close this, I forgot to mention this. I don't know if you guys remember from the episode where we had Orange Grove 55 on here, and we were talking about how every breakfast place Alex went to, he filmed on his vlogs, he went to get the breakfast, he enjoyed all the breakfasts he went to, but then subsequently, a few weeks later, all the places he went to get breakfast at stopped serving the plates of breakfast that he liked. And then just last week, we were talking about how Alex put out his second half of his Matterhorn history video, and just a few days later, we read that a chunk of the Matterhorn falls off the mountain, and now recently, Alex posted a 4K ride-through of the Disneyland Railroad, and literally the next day, the railroad breaks down. I don't know.
It was literally, the Ward Kimball was featured in my video.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was posted the same day that it broke down. So I posted it, and it just so happened to be that day that locomotive broke down. And after seeing all this bad luck of the restaurant stopping to stop serving breakfast that I order, things breaking down, I'm really worried about posting my next video. I'm going to have my next history video probably posted tomorrow or Monday. And I'm like, there's a part of me that's like worried, like, am I going to kill somebody? It's like, oh God.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a weird coincidence or if Alex is some sort of insider for Universal or what. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. If I don't know what the topic of his next history video is, so we'll have to wait and see what that is, and then we'll keep an eye on the OC register for the next couple days just to make sure everything goes by smoothly. Anyways, I felt like it's important to point that out to understand the whole context of everything today. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but anyways, thank you everybody for coming out to today's episode of Matterhorn Mondays. Big thank you to Mr. Jason for coming out and being a guest on the show. We had a lot of fun. And links to the podcast, the Roadies, which I can pronounce right. Roadies will be down in the description below. And like I said, I'll be on the next episode whenever that comes out. We'll see.
Monday, right? So like.
Okay, that's fair. All right. So you guys stay tuned for that. Really great podcast. I'm serious. I remember. I don't know if it was Jason or the other co-host that came to me and asked for a bunch of tips on how to do the podcast, and I was
probably Ryan, the one who called in.
Yeah. I remember he messaged me on Twitter and he was like, "Hey, how do you do your podcast?" And I gave him the rundown, and but really great stuff. Really great stuff that I don't know, really, like I said, link in the description. I laugh a lot when I listen to them. They have a lot of funny skits and stuff. Plus I'm a big
we're not like a news podcast. We're not like you. We talk about the news and discussions. We're more find funny issues and how can we make it original and fun.
Because I remember last week one of the topics was how can we tie in Stranger Things to the Epcot refurb. I'm pretty sure that was one of the topics. And
I'm sorry.
It's okay. That was a fun one. Like I said, link will be in the description. I'm excited to see what they have planned for when I come on the show. But anyways, of course, link to Alex's channel will be in the description, as it is always. And I'll put Jason's Twitter down there as well, because that's where he's most active on. And big thank you to everybody for coming out to today's show. And as always, it's really hot in my room, so I really want to turn my fan on. Have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.